Hello everyone and welcome to Real Life Talks. I'm your host Yvonne Heath, author of the book Love Your Life to Death and founder of the, I've got it backwards here, I Just Showed Up movement. So joining me today is a fellow author. I'm so excited that you're here. Doug, and pronounce your last name for me. I meant to ask you.
Gardham is usually how people pronounce it.
Well, how do you pronounce it?
Gardham is the way we kind of do
Gardham.
it, but if you
Doug
get
Gardham.
to Gardham rather than Graham.
I didn't want to say Gardham, but yes. Okay, so Doug
it works
Gardham.
fine.
Author, and the reason I'm so excited is we had such a wonderful conversation. You're like the male version of me, because in your story there's just so many parallels, because you took a leap of faith and followed your passion, and share with our audience, because that is just an extraordinary thing to do.
No, there's no question. Just the fact that I'm here today and talking to you about it. But no, I was going to say it's been nothing short of in many ways just remarkable to get a chance to do this. You introducing me as an author, even hearing that even today is a special thing, because I've always, well, as we talked about, writing found me when I was a teenager, so you can appreciate that's a long time ago.
Yes.
And I've been writing kind of ever since that time, but never actually been published.
Right.
And so when The Actor came out 5 years ago, it's been a thrill, and I've really never looked back.
So The Actor was your first book?
It was.
Yes.
It was the first. What happened was I was really looking to. I kind of thought it had missed me. Let's be honest. That's kind of how I was looking at it.
Yes.
But we were on a trip taking my daughter out west to go to school, our daughter, my wife and I.
Yes.
And it was occurred to me that I didn't have a keepsake for the family.
Okay.
And that's when I actually got connected with a publisher, and all things started to come together.
Yes.
And all I was thinking was a Christmas present for the family under the tree. That was kind of what I'd done. Now, I'd written The Actor back around the Titanic time, when the Titanic came out, when it was the last of the blockbusters.
Yeah.
And so that was the book. But what I didn't realize over the next 2 years, or the ensuing 2 years, what would kind of take place. And The Actor really became almost part of me. It was what and when I finished it, my biggest confusion was, what am I going to do now?
What now? Because you had a career, family
I
career.
was going to say, and I think that's, in many ways, I'm thankful for that, because that's given me the wonderful family. But I'd always had this passion from, like I said, from a young age. And so with that coming together, I just knew I couldn't continue to live a double life. And I couldn't let The Actor go. So, as I often will say, I decided to make what I considered already my life's passion, or my life's work, actually my life's work.
Yes.
And so some people call it extreme. I don't necessarily always see it that way.
Yep.
I just knew that I was going to have to do more than just write. And so that's what's kind of taken place ever since that point in time. But that's how it all came together. And so, as I was going to say, even now, we're 5 years into it. We have a couple bestsellers. I have a brand new book called The Musician, which actually is a sequel to The Actor.
How extraordinary.
And it's like, I just feel like I'm getting started. So.
But isn't it so excited to be, can we say how old you are? Because, you know, I'm happy to say I'm 53, so does
I was 56. It was strange that you mentioned that, because when I turned 50, birthdays had never bothered me. Like, that was a big thing. But I didn't want to even celebrate it.
Interesting.
And I didn't feel like something had gone on, but something obviously was going on.
Yes.
And I just didn't know it. And that's where I started to kind of, being engineering and science and math background.
So that's what was your career?
Yeah, I was going to say a career engineer. I spent most of my time in engineering, manufacturing, management, and leading groups as far as parts of the company. And so, like, it was a responsible position, and lots of hours. There's like no question about it. But what I was starting to find was what I had pictured and had thought this whole life, you can predict things and all that kind of stuff. In actual fact, you can't.
You can try.
You can sure try. And we are determined as, I think, humans to figure that out.
100%.
But even with, I had mentioned before, I'm glad from the point of view that we figured out things like science, so the airplanes stay in the air, right? I mean, those are things that are important.
You want to be creative with that.
But when you look at our whole human experience, it's not very big. Like, even our conversation right now, like, it's just, where did this come from? No prediction, it's just the way things kind of happen. And so that started to gel in my life, and that was right around the birthday time of 50. And so that's when things, well, as I said, I think I opened up to it. it was there all the time.
Right, of course. And I think a lot of that, and at age 50, I tell all people that that's when I took my leap of faith. I said, I'm doing something, unlike you though, which it kind of made a little bit more sense. You wrote your whole life. I was going to write a book and I had never written. So, my
that's what happened.
Husband was panicking a little, but I was so inspired. And I think it's, when you reach a certain age, maybe you start listening to that inner voice that just says, let's do this.
Well, I think you either do, or it passes you by.
Right.
And whether we like to believe it or not, we end up with regrets. And,
yes.
and I think we all have them. I think it's part of being human.
Of course.
And I can remember even the time when the book came out, where I was working, they were going through a reorganization and they were offering me these different positions to take. Now previously I would have just gone and done it. My whole life has kind of been, you're doing great here, this is what you're going to do, let's put the right next step in.
Yes.
So they were no less surprised when I came back and said, well, what happens if I don't want to do that? And then of course showed them, in fact, it was actually kind of a neat event. We were in a meeting and I said, go on the internet and look on Amazon. And they look up, I said, look up the actor. And they looked.
Let's see, where's the actor? Let's show people the actor. So that's the number one book.
So that was the cover that kind of came up.
Yes,
and
I love it.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased. It's a very symbolic
beautiful.
cover.
I love it.
And they looked at it, and the first thing that they said was, oh, look, there's an author with your name.
Hey, someone else's, same name.
That's me. And so things just kind of, and it wasn't like, oh man, this is what I'm doing. It was almost like, wow, you're getting an answer, or you're getting to your question, and you can choose.
The safe, more predictable, more, and I'm sure more people, family and friends would be, take that road, not.
A lot of people don't necessarily tell you that, though. They don't admit that.
Right.
But I mean, many people are concerned about your welfare in our world and all that kind of things. But I mean, and I couldn't do this without my best friend and my wife.
Yes.
Like that. Like it won't happen. And
What
I'm
is
sure
your
you can
wife's
relate
name?
to Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
She just, like I was going to say, that was a huge part of being able to do it, because it was like when I talked about it, she says, well, you've wanted to do this your whole life, why wouldn't you do it? Now we met in high school, so she even knows she even knows like what I went through even at that point in time, trying to figure it out. So from that standpoint, it was it just made sense. It was the right thing to do, and it wasn't like I wanted to do anything else. That was the biggest thing. Right,
and when you listen, you don't have a choice, but it sure is wonderful to have supportive people, because I couldn't have done this without Jordy either. It would have been literally impossible.
No, for sure.
And there are a lot of naysayers, though. I don't know, mine were quick to say, you're doing what? Oh, well, I guess you could always go back to nursing if this doesn't work, and that just fueled me to say, this is non-negotiable. This is the second act of my life, and to have created a book, or to have that in you, and I say people, no matter what is calling them, say, listen to it, listen, and
it's as you know, and I was going to say, I do a lot of book events. So this weekend, actually, I'm celebrating 275 book events in North America, which is a big 175.
Wow.
So for a person that wasn't going to do one,
wow,
it's kind of spectacular.
Unbelievable.
But the comment, and that's what you having read a book, one of the number one things I hear is, oh, I'd like to write a book someday. I think when I retire, I'll retire. I'd love to write a book. And I think many aspire to it, but very, very few seem to accomplish it. So congratulations on your achievement, because it is a pretty big deal.
Oh, it is a very big deal. And I'm reading this article. I read the article. It was Mark.
Mark Medley from
Mark
the books.
Medley. Yes,
from the
I highlighted, and it had quite a few laughs, because number one, first of all, you admit I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Right? You just went with your passion and said, I need to do this. And you're an introvert. You're a little shy, and here you are.
Well, that was the big part for me, even doing book events or personal appearances, was the fact that at a bookstore, I'm the guy that goes in through the door and go to a shelf and find a book to read.
Okay.
And by and large, I don't want to be bothered.
Yes.
And so that was a change. And Laura, she was the one that says, you were an engineer and you figured out you were writing. Surely you can figure out how to promote your writing.
Yes.
That was kind of the question.
Well, it doesn't just magically fly into everyone's hands, as I was hoping as well when they said, you need to be a speaker. I went, Pardon? No. I don't want to public speak or be a speaker, but who else is going to be your best promoter?
It really changes, I think, when it's connected deeply with you. I do think that thing you kind of find yourself. And what's interesting, this happened actually not that long ago, was that event, and a gentleman comes in the door, comes right up, shakes my hand, and I'm thinking, well, congratulating on my books and stuff. He says, no. He says, you're doing the Charles Dickens thing. And I'm going, thank you. Anytime I hear Charles Dickens writing, I was going to say this pretty close. He says, no. He says, this is how Charles Dickens actually promoted his work and got it to readers, was he would go out to the marketplace and talk about what he did. And he said somewhere in the 20th century, it became inappropriate for people, artists, to promote their own work. And he blamed the kind of the corporate world, because he says we segregate all the responsibilities. So the person who designs something, and I know that, rarely goes to a show and discusses. That's another department.
Interesting. Yes, of course.
So it was kind of appealing. But he said, it's a weird thing, because he says, well, if I go to an art gallery and the artist is there, he says, I have a whole new different perspective on what pictures on the wall when I hear them speak. And so it's like, wow, that
makes sense.
Cool. It does. But we seem to have lost a little bit of that for some reason or other, whether it's through our social media and the internet, or how even TV and radio have affected our life.
Connection.
It's to me, it's a huge thing. And as an author, I think it's an important thing that you do, because I don't know how you write, I'll call it literally, people and relationships without connecting with people that make them authentic and real.
That's right. There is nothing more gratifying than somebody saying, oh, I heard about your book. My friend said I have to get it. Would you mind signing it? And I sign a book and I hand it to them, and they're thanking me, and I just...
How crazy.
You just feel so...
I did that.
Yes, I did that.
That's a pretty cool thing.
It is a pretty cool thing, and it should be a pretty cool thing with whatever is calling someone inside.
For sure.
You know, I had a friend who actually just recently, and she had a successful business for many, many years, and she said, you know, I'm tired. I'd like to do something different. She said, I just want to be a dog walker. And I said, then go be a dog walker.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
No, really.
Go be a dog walker, actually. Figure out how you can make that happen. And you can make things happen. Yeah. However, if you're going to write a book and then write another and another, which, wow, we have to talk about that, but you need to be your very best promoter, or to decide what you want out of it, right? What are your ultimate goals? If you just want to write a book because you want to leave your legacy and it's just for your family and friends, that's great. If you want a career for the second act of your life, then that's fine. Follow your passion.
It's very true. And
but
I think an awful lot of times, and I think this is part of how we're affected by so much around us, is, and you've probably heard this, well, I'll write a book, it'll become a bestseller, I'll sit back and enjoy the rest of my life.
All the money will just start flowing in.
And it's one of those things that I think that's more, I think, how people actually even look at writing than what it kind of really is.
Yes.
And it's like, that's kind of that, if you want to call it that, fantasy dream.
Absolutely.
And it does, and that's what we hear about. We hear the J.K. Rowlings, the Stephen King, the James Patterson, but those are few. Like, there's very few that are doing that.
And I'm sure there's a lot of work behind the scenes that...
Huge, amazing, that you don't actually find out about.
Exactly.
And it's really no different. In fact, I've heard J.K. Rowling says, they really don't know what we do they?
Right. Oh, I know.
And I said, oh, isn't that awesome?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so my book, and I almost feel like it's cheating, because I know my passion, but my passion and what I'm really good at is finding people with great stories, and then I just tell their stories. I said, it's almost like cheating. But you have written 3, so The Actor was number 1, and then...
The Driving came out after that, and it's a collection of short stories, so it's not a novel. Okay,
so short stories, and then, but it's all fiction.
It's all fiction. It's all literary fiction.
So I think it's extraordinary. You have to create. You create every single character, the color of their eyes, the color of their... That sounds exhausting. Like, where do you get your inspiration? How long does it take to, how long did it, the Actor you wrote over many years.
I was going to say it took a long time. I would say The Musician is probably the best, because it didn't start until The Actor was out. I had no idea. In fact, I'm not a sequel kind of excited about them.
I see. Okay.
And but the characters kept talking to me. And the main character especially. And I know that sounds weird, but it's kind of,
I'm weird,
kind of how,
I get
how
it.
it happened. And then I went, and so I was really reluctant, and then I went back and saw The Godfather 1 and 2. And 2 is arguably as good as 1.
Okay.
And so really Francis Ford Coppola and his work was what took me to say, okay, you got to stand on that shoulder of that giant and see what happens. So The Musician came out after many, many rewrites. So it's about 5 years that it took.
Yes.
Now it went through a lot of different things, and in between that we slid the drive-in in.
Oh,
But
wow.
it went through an awful lot of different places from the point of view of even publishers taking a look at it. So
Right.
all of that went into rewrite after rewrite after rewrite. And now when The Musician came out, it's what I really wanted, especially when music was a big part of actually me finding writing.
Oh, so it's meaningful for you.
Because in high school, like I struggled, as I said, with writing, and I was a big reader, so it was very frustrating, but I was good at math, and so, and for many, that's a great thing. But I started a band then as well, and we wrote, I found I could write music, and relatively easy, and that's what we played, but we got tired of doing instrumentals, and we needed something to sing to. So I discovered lyrics, and I found that I could write them, because I look at it now, and there's no sentence structure. There's no rules, right? You basically have to match the melody and the rhythm.
Okay.
A lot of times lyrics don't even have to make sense, as we know.
No, or they can just be repeated throughout the whole song.
So
3 sentences.
I went, and that's what I found I could do. And then I moved from there into poetry and then prose. And when I graduated, that's when I really got serious about saying, okay, I want to learn how to storytell. Like, that's what I really want to do. And I often talk about it because it's an interesting thing, but so often when we're young, it's so hard to figure out what we're going to do. And often we're guided by, well, what are you really good at? And that's not necessarily a passion. That's just what we're good at.
That's very interesting, right, because you were very good at math.
Right. Now, I don't really want to see another spreadsheet.
Yes, right.
But I said, I knew, like, I've always loved books, and that writing, like, my day's not complete until I've written. Like, it just doesn't feel right. I'm off balance type of thing. Well, where does that come from? I can't explain that.
No.
And a lot would say, well, don't you like the math and science? Well, I do like that technology. I do like the things that are there.
Sure.
But when I compare it to being what you said earlier, finding a story and a character, and what are they going to tell me today?
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's kind of a neat thing to do.
It's incredible. Now, and you touched on the whole publishing, and isn't that just, wow, that's just a whole thing that's very difficult. So you self-published your first book?
I pushed this through iUniverse. I discovered them. They're kind of the leading, I'll say, self-publishing company in the world. I didn't know anything at the time.
Yeah.
And all I knew, and like I said, I was thinking of a gift for the family. I wasn't thinking any further than that.
Sure.
And I'm not from the publishing industry.
Right.
So now, 5 years into it, I've learned a lot. And I've been able to look at it from a business standpoint, and a lot of different things that have come together. And in fact, I've got a recent, a new webinar coming up with the publisher where we're talking about that particular subject. And so much of how I thought it worked and how I found it to work are like 180 degrees difference. Like, it's just like a flip.
Yes, I hear you.
And I think, like everything, it's not the same, but like music has gone through an enormous transformation. But, and I think books are, not so much books, but the publishing of the books are going through a similar kind of thing of how people are reading, right? And I used to compare them. But books haven't really changed since the Gutenberg Bible, like really format. And they're not, despite what we hear, they're really not changing, although they're more accessible with ebooks. But when you're in a bookstore and you see the piles of books people are taking out, there's no shortage on that.
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
and people have, it's tactile feel. There's something
I love
about
having a book in my hands.
And I think people generally like to. What I found is when I was traveling a lot, I had a Kindle, loved it. I could take books with me.
Sure.
But I'm back to books now, because one of the things that I found that I can't do is I'm kind of one that reads and you remember like a quote or a part, and then you want to go back to find it, and you know it was like about this far through the book.
Right.
You can't really do that with the electronics very easily. And in fact, I can't do it at all.
Right, that's
the other
true.
thing is every book's the same as an ebook. Like you get the same format.
The format,
and
yes.
our eyes, there's something about us as humans that we like the fact the book's a little bigger or heavier, the font's a little different, the papers feel is different.
I love it.
And there's a relationship.
Yeah.
Whereas music, I mean, it's wherever you get music today, it's like in the air, right? But how many formats has music gone through, even since Edison? Like a dozen and a half?
Yeah, when you think of it, right?
Just in our lifetimes, it's gone through 4 or 5. And so comparing them, I don't think is actually accurate. And I don't think books are going away. And that's one of the things that I found very interesting with the publishing world. But how that's being, shall we say, distributed is
that is
changed
definitely, and definitely you need to be your greatest marketing person, whether you have a publisher or a self-publisher, right?
Yeah.
And so with your 3 books, what would your ultimate goal, dream at this point? What would it be?
Well, right now, I mean, we're making a living at it.
Yes.
I want to make a very good living at it.
Yes.
But I'd also like to be recognized for the work, like the musician, the actor, the drive-in. There was a lot of care that goes into those stories. They're a big part of your life, and that's one of the things is trying to it's your art. In fact, somebody called me the other day and they were saying, your latest piece of art, and I thought that was kind of a neat thing to say. And it's like when you're trying to mix them and trying to put those together, and you see some of the other authors and what you're trying now to do, and now I don't want to do anything else.
Right.
And so it's not a question of...
You can't. I can't.
It's now, this is what we're doing.
Yes.
Sometimes it sounds like a bit of a scary thing to hear about.
Yep.
But I'm starting to find that there is a way when there is a will, and that's a pretty common expression. But when it's there, I think I remember a phrase from the late Tom Petty, and he was saying how he was being interviewed for the 40th anniversary, and he was asked, what would you say to a young person today? And he says, it's interesting you should say that. A young man came up, he loved music, but this other thing kind of come up. And he says, what should I do, Mr. Petty? And he told the young man, he says, you should do the other thing. And of course, the interviewer who's talking to him says, what are you doing?
Yes, destroy history.
Exactly. And he says, no, it's come to in my experience, he says, if it's not the only thing you want to do, he says, you're eventually, because they're going to test you at such a level.
Oh.
He said he saw the Beatles and he saw Elvis. And he said, I've never in my whole life wanted to do anything else.
There you go.
And so when you hear that, I said, I used to say, chase your dream to people. But after hearing, I thought it was the best piece of kind of, shall we say, wisdom with advice as what are we trying to do? What is it that we really want to do? And I think most of us, it's really hard. And
well, because there's a lot of rejection, and there's a lot of, I'm so used to rejection, and there's a lot of obstacles, and then there's a wonderful glowing moment. It's kind of like parenthood, isn't it? It's like when your children are, sick or crying all the time, and there's many hours that are very difficult, and then you have this glorious moment where your baby's being quiet in your arms. It's truly, that's a parallel, because it's like, no one responded, not interested. Oh yeah, we'd love to. Oh, okay, great. But if that isn't your passion, deep in your heart, it won't sustain you through other stuff.
And that's the thing.
It won't sustain you, but if you do have something, if there's something in there, just listen and find a way that you can cultivate whatever you need to cultivate with that, because it's those little moments, someone saying, I read your book and loved it. Okay, I'll keep going, right? I'll keep going. It's like I do a weekly blog with a video, and I think, does anybody care about this? And someone will say, oh, thank you so much. Or it's like, okay, I'll keep going. But if it's your passion, those little things will sustain you.
And it's also, I think, an important thing because you care.
That's right. You have to care.
And that's why I often say, even with people writing, it's got to be from your heart.
Absolutely.
Don't think that you can think for a teenager or you think for another person. And because I mean, even in developing products as an engineer, you find out that it just doesn't, it's very, very difficult. You have to do what you think is cool. You have to do things that are special in that word. The other thing that's kind of neat about a passion to me is the good part is that it's your decision.
Yes.
The bad part is that it's your decision.
It's your decision.
And you go through your life. And to me, often I think of that when you're trying to figure out. I think that's why I sometimes like the independence from the U.S. and saying, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To think that you can be happy all the time is a bit ludicrous.
Yes, absolutely.
But the pursuit of it,
yes,
it isn't. And it's kind of a neat thing. I recently saw this thing from Joseph Campbell, and he says, pursue your bliss.
I love that. Pursue your bliss. And this is your bliss right here.
There's no doubt about that.
Yes. So before we run out of time, we have the actor. We have, and then it was, right, the drive-in came in?
Correct.
Yes, the drive-in. And then the musician.
Which is brand new.
Brand new. So where can people get your books?
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to be in Chapters Newmarket actually tomorrow. But I'm actually all over kind of the place. So for the rest of the year, I'm going to be between Barnes & Noble and Chapters. You can get the books on Amazon,
okay.
Chapters, Indigo,
yes.
or in Barnes & Noble. Many of the stores now are carrying them.
Awesome.
And for me, as an author, for a Chapters Indigo to take the books across Canada is amazing.
Yes, absolutely. And we're out of time, if you can believe it.
No, I can't believe that.
I told you. I am so excited to have you here because I love that you're following your bliss and you're a great inspiration for other people. We're going to exchange books, aren't we?
We will, for sure.
We have to do that.
You just have to pick which one.
Yes, I know. That's going to be hard. Thank you so much for being here. I wish you so much all the success in the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today on Real Life Talks. This is a show about learning how to just show up for yourself and just show up for others. And sometimes that might mean following your bliss. So if you want to be empowered and resilient and you want to be able to just show up for yourself, my call to action is always plan your life, plan your death, and then just love your life to death. And always bring your own tambourine to the party. Thanks. Bye for now.